NFL insider Albert Breer linked a top Jets head coach candidate to a captivating GM candidate. Could the New York Jets pull this move off? We'll talk about that and much more, all coming up here on a Thursday edition of NY Flight Jets Talk.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer, Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer, and Jets legend, Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
Hello everyone, and welcome in to another edition of NY Flight Jets Talk here on this Thursday afternoon, January 16th, 2025, and another day. And there's not another Jets GM or head coach in place. They're still interviewing candidates. They finished all their GM candidates they were scheduled to meet with. So it seems as if, the GM candidates are now on round 2, but it seems like the Jets are still alive and well when it comes to interviewing all these head coach candidates. They just interviewed Bobby Slowick earlier. They're interviewing Bobby Slowick, later today. They spoke with Arthur Smith earlier today, so we're going to break down all the interviews, much more. That report I mentioned, the preview of the show from Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated. Everyone smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. I really appreciate your support on the show. Every membership you gift, don't forget, gives you a ticket into our raffle, and the prizes are live, and the leaderboard is at the bottom. Our prizes here, I'll try to get this up on the screen. Here's one of our prizes. We have a few prizes here. First prize is a Garrett Wilson signed mini helmet. So be sure every membership you give gets you a ticket into this raffle. The winners are drawn at the end of the month. First prize is a Garrett Wilson signed mini helmet. The second prize for this month is a Wayne Corbett signed football. So 2 elite prizes we have. And the more memberships you give, the more, elite exclusive prize categories we're able to unlock. So those are the top 2 prizes. Then you get a free item for our merch store along with and then the other prize is a channel emoji. So 4 prizes we have this month. So it's up to everyone in the chat. Good luck, bud. Taking care of the business. Appreciate you tuning in. BC, good to see you in the chat. John B says, "Hey Connor, love your take, young man. Do you happen to have a merch store? Love to rock your brand." John, I really appreciate it. It should be in the description down below. But if it is not in the description, I'm going to throw it in the chat right now. John, I appreciate that you want to support the brand and everyone. It would mean the world to me if you could go ahead and check out the merch store. I'm about to throw in the chat here. Let's see. The call-in link is pinned, so if you want to call in, you can call in via the pin link. But here's the merch store per John's request. John, appreciate it. Go in there. Ton of items. We have mugs. We have shirts, sweatshirts, golf shirts, hoodies, everything. So be sure to check it out, John. Appreciate you. NY Jets Superfan tuning in. Superfan, good to see you in the chat. Appreciate your support. Moderator coming in. Joe Grana. Lance Newman, head of football ops. GM Lance Newman, head of football ops, Rick Spielman, head coach Glenn, assistant head coach, quarterback QB coach Josh McCown, OC John Morton at a veteran DC and O-line coach, great structure. I really like that plan, Joe. We're going to get into that in a second, but our guy Rick Kent comes in and he drops a 5 spot of channel memberships. We're going to give him a Jets check. Rick Kent, an absolute legend, comes in and drops 5 channel memberships. I think that's 5 more raffle tickets for you. Here are the raffle tickets that get you into our raffle. Be sure to do it. I appreciate all of your support. Those 5 memberships went to Duncan McLean, John LG, Jaro921, David Rivera, and Motivated T. We're all members to the channel thanks to our guy, Rick Kent. Rick, that means a lot. So now you're tied for the lead with 20 gifted memberships this month with DB94 and Jimmy Jets. We'll be sure to update the ticker at the end of the show, Rick. Appreciate you tuning in, and I appreciate all your support. Keep the comments flowing. Keep the gifted memberships flowing. Liking the video is the free way to support the show, but, liking, gifting, it means a lot. And you guys are what keeps the show going. Get on the conversation, call into the show. And then we have a ton of mailbag questions from this week we'll be sure to get into, but all of your questions come first, of course. So let's go back to Joe's comment. We broke that down. Newman is really interesting. He's really the main topic of today's video because he was the GM that Albert Breer linked to Aaron Glenn's potential combo. So here's what Newmark's resume kind of looks like. He's in his first season with the Commanders as their assistant general manager. They've obviously gone through this rapid resurgence this season, so there's something there to like. He has 28 years of experience as an executive, 26 which came with the Lions. He was the senior director of player personnel for I think last year, and then I think he was in that role for 5 or 6 seasons. So he has a ton of experience. He's obviously linked to Glenn from a ton of those seasons over in Detroit. So I would not mind Newman as GM. Newman doesn't have a direct GM experience, but I think he is seasoned enough. I would be okay, handing him the keys to the franchise. So I'm okay with that. Head of football ops Spielman. That's another GM candidate I wanted to get into. I don't know if he'd particularly take a parallel leap. I think if he were to come here, it would be for the GM role. But obviously, his brother Rick Spielman is assisting with this GM search. He was brought in, for a general manager interview. He played for the Lions. He's been with the Lions his whole career as an executive. He leads franchise history leader in tackles. So that's something cool there. And a huge part of his resume that he apparently played a huge role in the addition of Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. So the hiring of those two guys, obviously Brad Holmes, the GM job, and Dan Campbell. So that's a really interesting story there on Spielman. Spielman and Newman, you could say, I would love to have them both, but if I would be okay taking either one of them as GM, honestly, just based on what we've seen. For sure, assistant head coach, quarterback coach, quarterback coach Josh McCown. Here's the thing. I think if you get McCown, it's as a quarterback coach, and not a quarterback coach, excuse me. It's as an offensive coordinator or a head coach. Like, I just don't see him again wanting to take a parallel leap. I think he's in a great situation right now with the Vikings. So, you bring me Lance Newmark as GM, you bring me Josh McCown, assistant head coach, quarterback coach, John Morton, OC, veteran DC and O-line coach, sign me up. I just think if I had to make the most realistic list here, I would say Spielman would get if Glenn was the head coach, I'd say Spielman would get the GM job over Newmark. I don't even know if McCown would be a part of it because they're not directly connected. Overall, bottom line, I like the plan. And I like that you threw John Morton in there because he was the Jets OC in 2017, only one season. Under John, I guess you could say McCown and Morton are connected. I think if you could get those two on the same staff, that could be really, really cool. But Morton has the history. He was an OC candidate I had down in my notes for today's show. He's an OC candidate I could see Glenn bringing with him. And then obviously he has the history with the Jets. So Morton could be really interesting. He's the Broncos passing game coordinator right now. So I'd say Morton's an interesting name to watch for the OC job if Aaron Glenn officially lands the head coaching job. Defensive coordinator job, I think Dennis Allen is a sneaky name to watch. Obviously, he was just dismissed over in New Orleans. Dennis Allen, Matt Eberflus, I think are two captivating names to watch for the DC job. Kelvin Shepard is a name that Aaron Glenn is connected to. So ultimately, I think this is what it looks like. Aaron Glenn gets the head coaching job. I think Aaron Glenn gets the head coaching job. Name I'm blanking on. Mike Borgonzi. There it is. Mike Borgonzi gets the GM job of the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, to be clear, this is not what I want to happen. This is what I think is going to happen. Glenn head coach, Borgonzi GM, offensive coordinator John Morton, defensive coordinator will say Dennis Allen. I think that's what it looks like. So great question there, Joe. Keep the questions coming. We have a lot to get into on today's show. Before we get any further, 5 more channel memberships for DB94, and he takes the lead. He's a Broncos fan who suffered a tough loss to division rival Buffalo Bills. And DB, I was rooting for you, but we have to give you a Jets chant. DB means a lot. I'm sorry for that tough loss. Hey, you got up to a great 7-0 start. Like, Bo Nix fired that deep touchdown pass. I'm like, this is gonna be the game. I was thinking of you, DB. I'm like, you're gonna be hyped in the chat. I was rooting for the Broncos. They were kind of like that Cinderella story type team this year. But they couldn't surpass the Buffalo Bills. They got off to a hot start. I guess there's something to like there. And I know the Vance Joseph, who's now being discussed as a head coach candidate, know a lot of Broncos fans. So throw your input there, DB, on Vance. Sorry about that. I accidentally StreamYard just canceled me out for some reason. So sorry, but I am back. So yeah, what I was saying is, DB, drop your thoughts on Vance Joseph because I want to see what you have to say on on the defensive coordinator and your former head coach. He's their defensive coordinator right now. Obviously, was their head coach for a few seasons. Interesting name there. Let's see who those memberships go to. Let's see that. Let's click back. All right, TD Finstock. One of the best, I think the best Dolphins, content creator out there. TD, good to see you got your membership. John B, Brian Glick, Jet Life 321, Caden P. You are all members of the show. Thank our guy DB94 in the chat. 5 more memberships. Now you're out in the lead with 25. That ticker will be updated at the end of the show. DB, appreciate it. Keep the memberships coming. Let's see, where are we? Keep up the good work, Connor. DB needs a lot. Appreciate you. There we are. So, Caden, good to see you in the chat. Appreciate your support. We're on the same page here. Glenn, head coach. Borgon CGM. That's interesting. Alan, good to see you in the chat. Appreciate you tuning in. Casey Halpern, thoughts on Arthur Smith? Casey, Arthur Smith's a really interesting candidate. I think the nickname he's kind of been receiving from the fan base is, Adam Gase 2.0. Because you look at Smith's first stint as a head coach. First off, the Jets were really close to hiring him in 2021. So it could be something similar to what the Jets did with Adam Gase. They were really close to hiring him in 2016 it was, before they eventually brought him in 2019. So Jets have had prior talks with Smith, which is interesting. Has had coaching experience as an offensive mind like Gase. Here's my thing. I don't necessarily want him because you look at what he's done. He did, first off, with his time with the Falcons, 7-10 overall 3 seasons there. 21-30 record is what he finished with. So that's not appealing. He hasn't shown much as a head coach. I wouldn't necessarily say he's a culture builder / leader type guy. I just don't think that's what he is. And the Pittsburgh offense, I understand they have nothing at the quarterback position, but still their offense, I think, finished 20-something in yards. They were at the bottom of the league from a yardage standpoint. Arthur Smith, if he's someone who gets fired from Pittsburgh and he wants to take an OC job with the Jets, I'll take him, but not as head coach. Definitely not as head coach. Let's see, where are we? The other interview I wanted to talk about before we keep it going here is Bobby Slowick. I mentioned him earlier at the show. He's interesting because you look at how much success the Texans had last year. Now their offense has kind of had a steep decline. I think that's safe to say. I think they had a great performance in the playoffs, but still, great performance round 1 against the Chargers at home, who have choked in the playoffs, but they struggled all season long. I think they finished kind of at the bottom of the league from a yard standpoint. C.J. Stroud's play took a step back. So, I'm not comfortable. I will say this about Slowick, though. He's 37 years old, 3rd season with the Texans as their offensive coordinator. I think he has one of the highest ceilings out of all the head coach candidates this cycle because he's a younger, innovative offensive mind. And as we know, this is an offensive-driven league. But still, I think he has the lowest floor. So I think he's right up there with Joe Brady for the most upside this hiring cycle. But I also think he has the lowest floor. So I think that's too much of a risk. And what we've seen, I want someone who's ready for the job. I don't want some 37-year-old innovative offensive mind who I don't even think deserves a head coaching job. Like Liam Cohen, who's 37, Bobby Slowick. I would take him in a heartbeat. I would take him over Bobby Slowick any day of the week. That is what I'd do. So I'm going to avoid Bobby Slowick. That's what I wanted to get out there. DB, I hope Vance Joseph was a Rooney Rule interview. He's not a head coach. D, I'll say this about his head coaching experience. He showed during his time as the Broncos head coach he's not worthy of a head coaching job. I think he's the perfect example of someone who is a great coordinator in this league, but just simply isn't a head coach. That's my thoughts on Vance Joseph. Let's see. Let me pull up the list of candidates. The Jets, I don't think he was a Rooney Rule candidate because they have interviewed Ron Rivera, who counts as a Rooney Rule, and Mike Locksley, those 2 guys. So Jets could be expressing some serious interest in him, which is scary. I don't think Vance will get the job, but I think the mentality of the search from what we've seen is they're not leaving one stone unturned. But yet they won't interview John Gruden, Pete Carroll, or Mike McCarthy, which is mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling. So yeah, I don't know if he was a Rooney Rule interview. He potentially could have been. I just think the Jets want to leave no stone unturned. Where are we? Yeah, this is what I could see. Pete Carmichael, OC, Dennis Allen, DC. Dennis Allen, obviously from the Saints. Pete Carmichael, him and Glenn were connected with the Saints. Pete Carmichael comes from same place as Joe Lombardi and John Morton right now. 3 guys that Glenn is connected to, funny enough. Not from the Broncos organization, because Glenn doesn't have any direct connections to the Broncos organization, but Carmichael and Glenn overlapped in New Orleans from 2009 to 2000. Carmichael was with the Saints from 2009 to 2023, and then obviously him and Glenn overlapped at some point there. So Carmichael is definitely a name to watch for OC under Glenn, and then Dennis Allen connection there in New Orleans. Let's see, where are we? Well, the fact that the Jets are dragging their feet lets me believe they know who their guys are. Woody's known for being reactive, seems comfortable where times are at, considering what Tennessee are doing. Um, I think with the Jets, I don't know if they'd because I think they're gonna hire Aaron Glenn. I think they're gonna hire Aaron Glenn or Brian Flores. Brian Flores, I think, would have been hired by now if he was really to be the guy because they're eliminated right now. So I could have seen something. Let's say that interview, went really, really well. I could have seen the Jets potentially doing something where it's like, hey, handshake agreement. Once the season ends, we name you your head coach. We don't want to cause any distractions before you go into State Farm Stadium and take on the Rams first round of the playoffs after a 14-3 season. Now, on the other hand, Glenn is playing in the divisional round against the Commanders at home. So, like, do you want to wait that long to bring in a head coach and drag your feet? Because I think the Lions have the potential. I think they're going to make the Super Bowl. So, do you really want to wait till midway through February until you officially get a head coach in the building? Like, do we really want to do that? I think that's the main question. I think that's a pressing issue where we stand right now. And same with Borgonzi. Like, if they're gonna hire Borgonzi, I kind of want it done. Like, I think you can. I think there's some sort of rule where you can hire someone, even though while they're midway through the playoffs. But still, I don't want to have to wait till the Super Bowl to get a head coach and GM in place. I want a GM in here before the Senior Bowl. That's my goal. Senior Bowl is what, January 25th, January 26th is the actual game, so 9 days. I want a GM in here by next week. I think it is that important to get a head start on free agency, get a head start on this pre-draft process. Draft starts in Mobile. Mobile's 2 weeks away now, week or two away now. So I want a GM in here soon. That's for sure. That's where I am. That's where I am with that. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, call into the show, pin comment in the chat. Keep the memberships flowing. Appreciate your support. Keep your questions and comments coming as well. We'll be sure to get to all of that coming up here. Teresa Ice tuning in. Teresa, appreciate your support. What are your thoughts on Mike McCarthy? McCarthy's really interesting. He has the connection with Rodgers in Green Bay. Super Bowl winning head coach, 18 years of head coaching experience. He's been I think what he did with the Cowboys, obviously they just went 7-10. They were awful roster, riddled with injuries. And also you have a meddling owner there, but he's brought that team to the playoffs before. He did great things with the Packers. I know his playoff, he's great in the regular season. That's what he's known for. He's a great head coach in the regular season, but he's not necessarily consistent in the playoffs. He's still 500 in the playoffs. So that's important to note, and he's won a Super Bowl. Why not speak to him? I don't understand why the Jets are talking to Mike Locksley, who went 2-26 as New Mexico's head coach and choked out an assistant coach in the locker room in 2009, and who just coached a Maryland team who went 4-8. You're interviewing him, but you're not interviewing the guy who's made the playoffs almost every year as a head coach, took a Cowboys team with a meddling owner that's almost an impossible market to win in. He took them to the playoffs 2-12-5 seasons. You're not going to interview that guy? Like, come on. What are we doing here? Like, you want to do that mentality? You want to cast a wide net? You want to leave no stone unturned? How about you interview these legit candidates who are actually qualified for the job? Like, I think interviewing Mike Locksley is taking it a step too far, but yet you won't speak to Mike McCarthy, Pete Carroll, or John Gruden. It's just puzzling to me. I don't get it. Great question there, Teresa. Casey says, how do I call into the show? Casey, click the pinned comment in the chat, and we will get you up on the air calling into the show. I appreciate your support. Alan comes in and says it would be Jets like to let Glenn take the Saints job. Flores would be a ticking time bomb here. In which way, Alan, do you see him being a ticking time bomb? In the sense of you don't think he's able to handle the media? You think he's going to alienate players like he did in Miami? My thing with Flores is I think he learned from his first stint as a head coach, and I think that is really important. He has head coaching experience. You look what he did. He didn't make the playoffs there, but he enjoyed a few. He finished his tenure 24-25, but they had a winning season there. He's had coach experience. He might have alienated players, but like I said, I think he's learned and he's able to come in and he's going to be hard on these guys. Like, I'm tired of having coaches who are the players' best friends. Example, Adam Gase, Robert Saleh, Todd Bowles. We need someone who's going to be able to come in here and command a room. Come on, I think Glenn gives you that too. But I think what happens, Alan, is I think Mike McCarthy takes the Saints job and Aaron Glenn comes to the Jets. That's what I think is going to happen. Let's see, where are we? Joshua tuning in. Josh, appreciate your support. Glenn over Flores with Flores. Ref will continue to call 16 penalties per game. What I have to say here is I think I think Glenn's more intriguing than Flores. I feel like you kind of know what you're getting in Flores. I think Glenn, there's that, kind of uncovered ceiling that you could find in a guy like him. They're both defensive minds. They've both done great things as defensive coordinators in this league. But I think Glenn his name just rings a bell, kind of, so to speak, when it comes to this search. Given that he spent 8 years with the team, he was their first round pick in '94. He returned to the organization two seasons after his retirement as a personnel scout. Like, it just makes sense for the Jets to hire Aaron Glenn. I think it would be such a cool storyline. And I think he's qualified for the job. He's a top candidate after Mike Vrabel's off the board. I have him at my number 1 or number 2 option right now. That's where I am, given all these candidates available following Mike Vrabel's dismissal. Smash the like button on Mike Vrabel's dismissal. I was from Tennessee a few years ago, and now officially becoming the New England Patriots head coach. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Appreciate all your support. Keep the questions, comments flowing. Gift memberships means a lot. We'll go over to the phone lines. We have our guy Casey, who's joining us here on the show. Casey, what's going on?
Connor, what's going on? First time, long time, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing well. Good to finally get you on the show. Where do you sit right now, head coach, GM search? I mean, we're sitting here. What's the exact date? January 16th. We don't have a head coach in place. We don't have a GM. Are you leaning the Glenn route? Are you leaning the Flores route? What are you prioritizing right now?
Well, first off, let me preface this as I found out about your content through the Rich Eisen show a few months ago.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
One of my really good friends growing up actually is good friends with your father and works with him, so he got turned on to your content.
Oh, wow.
Diehard Jets fan, so he sent me your stuff. So I just want to congratulate you on all your success. Keep crushing it.
I appreciate it.
As young as yourself, it's awesome to see you having so much fun and having an incredible community that you're building. So keep up the great work.
Means a lot, man. Appreciate it.
Just continue to crush it.
I appreciate your support.
In terms of the Jets, it stinks because I take it you've never seen a playoff appearance, correct?
Nope, none. I haven't seen most I've seen them win. I was alive for the 10-6 year in 2015 where they choke out that final game of the season. Since I've watched, the best I've seen them go is 7-10. Like, I was not watching football that year when I was 4 years old.
So you've seen one winning season, and truthfully, like, you probably don't even remember much from it.
No, I don't even remember it. Like, as a fan, the best I've seen is 7-10.
It's depressing, man. It really is.
Yep.
It could drive you mad, but it's good to see you have this incredible loyalty and unbridled enthusiasm. So that's awesome. In terms of the head coaching, look, I'm all for casting a wide net. It's just at this point, it seems like we're paying the 33rd team on a per interview basis, which because 10 of the names that they've brought in the door are just, in my opinion, outright laughable. I am someone who prides himself on being a more sophisticated football fan. I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of bright minds. I used to work for Sunday Night Football for quite a bit. So I kind of I detached a bit from the Jets because doing what I used to do, I just had to be a little unbiased.
Of course.
Luckily, they weren't as great. So I kind of through a different lens. But it's disheartening to see when you bring in 16 candidates and let's call it 60% of them are just total non-starters, right? And then you have the media saying, basically carrying these guys water, basically shilling for them and the organization. That part of it sucks. I hate it. But look, hopefully we're coming to a close here. If they do hire someone like Art Smith, if they do bring back a Rex Ryan, if they do hire a Ron Rivera, which I don't think any of this is happening, but I will be completely done and checked out. It would be cool to see Aaron Glenn come home, take the job. It really seems like he is a very, very worthy candidate. I mean, I've been following Aaron Glenn since he's been in the NFL. Obviously, I've been a Jets fan for 29 years, going on 30 here.
Wow.
But I think he would be an interesting candidate. Flores, I think is a great football mind. However, I do worry about that personality a bit. It is also a relationship business. The stuff that came out of Miami after his stint there is a bit concerning. It did seem like he came into a dictatorship. But obviously, being out of coaching for 2 years, 3 years now, it seems like
he's the Vikings DC. Right. He hasn't been the coach.
Removing himself from head coaching for 3 years now. You'd like to think he learned under Mike Tomlin, Kevin O'Connell, and just obviously he probably looks back on a lot of those relationships and regrets a lot of the stuff that happened. Also, I imagine working with Stephen Ross is quite challenging as I got friends who work with him on a daily basis, and I hear some
Jerry
stories.
Jones-esque.
But look, Woody Johnson isn't no different, probably.
Agreed.
But does Brian Flores come to New York unless without Ryan Grigson, which is a total non-starter for me? Are you like? I'm not sure if you're familiar with a lot of the GM candidates, but Ryan Grigson, in my eyes, is just completely laughable. He drove Andrew Luck to retirement, woefully supported him, spent first-round draft picks on guys like Bourne Warner, Philip Dorsett, traded a first-round draft pick for Trent Richardson. You've probably never heard of two of these guys.
I know Trent Richardson just because of that trade.
Of course. Like Bjorn Warner, Trent, Philip Dorsett, probably not.
Philip Dorsett was in the league for a long time. So
you know, he did latch on with the Pats toward the latter end of his career and did pretty nicely with them in a reserve role. So I'll give him that, but not worthy of a first-round pick. But to give a guy like Ryan Grigson or a guy like Art Smith a second shot before someone like a Mike Borgonzi, an Alec Hallaby, who's with the Philadelphia Eagles, who I love, and an Aaron Glenn, like worthy recipients to become a first-time head coach or general manager, that's what grinds my gears. I think that, look, they're grasping at straws here. I don't think they know what they want, if you want me to be honest with you, which is a bit concerning to me. But in the end, I have a theory that my friend actually started, and sorry, someone's calling me.
You're all good.
That I've been buying into more and more the more I think about it.
Okay.
So the Jets I'll present it with you, and then I unfortunately have to go. I got to get back to work.
Oh, good.
This has been fun.
Yeah, for sure.
So the Jets have had, I believe, 18 head coaching interviews.
18 or 19, I think.
Something like that.
Yep.
Now, Woody Johnson is always considerate about how he's portrayed in the media. He never wants to be talked badly about. Like, there's a lot of stuff that has come out over the years about him, and he really likes to paint himself as this really magnanimous individual who's not as bad as everyone makes it out to seem, right? So I think that they're bringing in a lot of these candidates to save face for a bit, because I think they're going to make a hire that some in the media or just some people in general would say, how do you go ahead and hire someone with this little experience as an offensive coordinator, head coach, defensive coordinator? And I think that hire is going to be Josh McCown.
Wow.
And I think a lot of these interviews are to save face in the media and say, hey, we brought in 18 candidates, some of who are white, some of who are black. It shouldn't matter. Mm-hmm. I think we need to bring in the most qualified guy, but I think that's what the picture Woody Johnson wants to paint for people on the outside looking in, that we did leave no stone unturned. We interviewed everyone, and we came away saying Josh McCown is the guy. And I think they're just scared of the backlash where someone might say, how could you say Josh McCown is the guy? He's never been the offensive coordinator. He's never been a DC head coach. He's been out of the league for only 4 years now. But I do think it will end up being the wild card, Josh McCown. I find it interesting that Zach Rosenblatt actually dropped this on Joe Caporoso and Connor Rogers' Badlands, which is excellent, by the way, that Chris Johnson apparently was in Josh McCown's wedding party.
Wow.
Or vice versa. Josh McCown was in Chris Johnson's wedding party, which
I haven't seen this. I listen to Badlands, but I've been so busy the past few days. I haven't caught this recent edition. So fill me in here.
Which was quite an interesting nugget. And after I heard that, I texted my friend. I said, you know what? I'm right on board with your theory. And I think that's what's going to happen here. And look, I think Josh McCown could be an excellent head coach in the league. I know he's beloved by the Jets organization. He spent 2 years with us. I think the fans really liked him. I think he can be a future great head coach. I think this would be a move that's more proactive rather than reactive, which would be refreshing, because you'd be hiring a guy you think won't be available in a year, right? You're hiring them earlier rather than later. So, look, we'll see what happens here, but I'm going to go with Josh McCown for the reasons I laid out to you, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, my thoughts on McCown, I've talked about him recently. I'd put him in my top 5 right now, just from an upside standpoint. I'd rather be. It is concerning, Casey. Don't get me wrong. That he's never called plays before as a coach. He only has 2 years of coaching experience. That is concerning. Never been a coordinator. But look at what Zach Taylor did, being the Rams' assistant quarterbacks coach, and then right into the Bengals head coaching job. I'd rather be a year early to a guy like McCown than miss out on him when he's a hot commodity next coaching cycle. And he goes, Mike McDaniel gets canned. He goes to the Dolphins, and he's the one of the greatest coaches in Miami Dolphins history. I think it does help that he not only was a journeyman quarterback for 18 seasons, so he has this special connection with players. He's been a mentor throughout his playing career. He has this connection to the Jets. He's loved in the Jets building, like you mentioned. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense if the Jets want to do that. But my one thing, if you're going to bring in a first-time head coach, especially someone who's never been a coordinator, I think you need to surround him with the right staff. So I was digging into offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator candidates he's connected to. Offensive coordinator job. You give me Doug Peterson, who he played under in Philadelphia. Sign me up. He's that veteran play caller, won a Super Bowl as a coach, has a ton of head coaching experience. Like, sign me up for a guy like Doug Peterson. And then the defensive coordinator job, Casey, I'm sure you remember him, Mike Pettin, who was the defensive coordinator under Rex Ryan. They're connected now in Minnesota. They're on the same coaching staff, so he's a sneaky name to watch. Lovie Smith is someone McCown played under. Both of those Pettin and Lovie Smith both have head coaching experience. So you bring me an offensive coordinator with head coaching experience in Doug Peterson, and you bring me a defensive coordinator with head coaching experience in Mike Pettin, Lovie Smith, or someone else he's connected to. Like, sign me up for that. I'd rather, at this point, with Vrabel off the board, I'm starting to kind of venture off to the zone where it's like, let's just take a big swing at someone. We haven't made the playoffs in 14 years. Put these 14 years behind us. The goal is to win a Super Bowl, not make the playoffs and get bounced in the first round. That's what I've been saying. That's why I don't want to give up a first-round pick and then some for Mike Tomlin. I love the guy. He's my favorite coach in the league. Hasn't won a playoff game since 2016. Like, I'm just not for that. I'd rather take a big swing on an innovative offensive mind like a Joe Brady, like a Liam Cohen, who it's crazy that he's not even interviewing for the Jets job, like a Josh McCown, and then boom, maybe you start off a little rocky, but then a few years down the road, you're making a push at the Super Bowl. Like, that's where I stand right now. So, Casey, I appreciate the call. Great thoughts, great questions there. You got any final thoughts?
No, I think you put it correctly. I think Josh McCown would just need to surround himself with experienced guys, people like Doug Peterson, Lovie Smith. And I think also an added benefit of that is, let's say they do have a successful season. A lot of teams aren't going to come calling to hire either Doug Peterson or Lovie Smith.
No.
That's a staff that could remain intact pending everything is going well for quite a while. So I would like to see it. I think I would like to see the job go to Josh McCown or Aaron Glenn. Just anyone aside from if it's one of those aforementioned guys I mentioned at the beginning, those total non-starters, I'll be done. But look, fortune favors the bold. Let's see if the Jets do something that will surprise us in a good way here. But Connor, appreciate you having me. Keep crushing it. If I could ever help you, break into the sports world, please let me know.
I appreciate it.
No problem. I am assured of that.
Casey, that means a lot. Appreciate you checking in. Great thoughts, great stuff. As always, if you guys want to call in on the show, pin a comment in the chat, smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. While we were talking with Casey, we'll get to all your questions. I meant to mention that as well. While we were talking to Casey, some super chats came in by way of our guy Chris J, and we are going to give him a Jets chat. Jets. There we go. Chris J coming in with a $5 super chat. Sorry, Connor, no memberships today. I'm in the office. Comes in with a $5 super chat. Chris, that means a lot. Appreciate the $5. Appreciate your support. Oh, we got to get you a wrench. I'll give you a wrench after the show. You're always in the live streams. You're always supporting me, which means a lot. So I'll give you a wrench today. I appreciate your support. And then he comes in with another $5, Chris. That means the world. Appreciate you sticking with me as always, and I appreciate you tuning in. Sharon comes in and says, Glenn head coach, McCown OC, Darnold QB, Holy Jets Trinity Batman. I don't know the chances of this happening. I'd say it's slim to none, but sign me up. You bring Sam Darnold back, maybe you can get McCown and Darnold in somewhat of a duo type package, and then you bring in Glenn as head coach. Like, sign me up for that. I would freaking be all in on that. Well, Dave, I think it's going to be Spielman / Newmark and Glenn. I think it's either going to be Spielman, Newmark, or Borgonzi at the GM job, and I think it's going to be Glenn or Flores. If I had to make, like I said earlier, if I had to make an immediate prediction, it would be Borgonzi and Glenn if I had to make a prediction today. Where are we? Keep the questions coming in. Brian, 33rd team employs Adam Gase. They also likely get paid per hour. Why wouldn't they interview anyone? Everyone, excuse me. Brian, I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate your support. This is what I have to say. There's two different parts of the 33rd team. There is a media side where they do like all the media stuff. So Jim Nagy is a part of that. Adam Gase is a part of that. I'm trying to think of some other names off the top of my head. Kyle Krabs is their draft analyst. And then there's the consulting side of things that are meant to conduct these head coaching searches in Rick Spielman and Mike Tannenbaum. So there's two different parts of the 33rd team. This was spoken about when the Jets first brought them on. There's the media side, which Adam Gase is a part of. Wayne Corbett's a part of their media side too. Santonio Holmes is a part of their media side, some former Jets there as well. That is their media side of the company. Their consulting side of the company is Rick Spielman, is Mike Tannenbaum. So although Adam Gase is employed by the 33rd team, he's on a completely separate side of the 33rd team, if that makes sense. There are two parts to this corporation. So that's where it is. Let's see. Wild Wave, I couldn't necessarily agree. I could agree here. I don't know. I couldn't necessarily agree is what I guess I was trying to say. Tomlin, I think, is overrated. I love him. Don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of him. But I mean, he gets into the playoffs every year, but they never make it past the first round. I want to win a Super Bowl, not go one and done every year in the playoffs. Like I said, put the past 14 years behind us. I want to go win a Super Bowl. That's what I want to see. Taylor Sterling, get McCown, draft McCord. I think this could be an interesting duo. Kyle McCord was a huge fan of the Jets. He wears number 6 in honor of Mark Sanchez. You get me Kyle McCord from Syracuse in the 3rd or 4th round. Sign me up. Maybe you take a dart throw at a guy like him. I wouldn't mind that. Brian, it would make me feel comfortable if a first-time head coach had prior head coaches on the coaching roster. That's what I said about Josh McCown. Like, you bring me Josh McCown, okay, but I need coaches with experience. That's what I need. So, Aaron Glenn, I trust Aaron Glenn enough. I would love to have a guy with head coaching experience on his staff, but I feel like I trust him enough to be a head coach. Compared to McCown, we haven't even seen him call plays, so you really don't know what you're getting with him. Let's see. Rich, good to see you in the chat. I appreciate your support. Aaron Glenn, another reason I want him is because he understands that a coach has to put players in positions to succeed. Salah/Ulbrich didn't do that. I also think Glenn you could say Ulbrich was an NFL linebacker as well, but another thing is like Glenn knows what it's like to be a New York Jet. He knows how to handle this media market. He knows what it's like to be a prominent figure in this organization. I think that's something really really interesting to look at. So that's what I really like about Aaron Glenn. That's why I think he should I think that's why he should be the next head coach. He's a fiery personality. I think he is ready to be a head coach in this league. He knows what it's like to be a part of the Jets organization, and that he's able to put players in positions to succeed. You look what he did. He inherited a mess, an absolute mess of the Lions defense, and then now turns them into a top 5 unit in this league. I want Aaron Glenn 1,000 times, any day of the week. Give me Aaron Glenn. Give me Aaron Glenn with a Tanner Engstrand, a Mark Burnell, who was a quarterback on this team, is the assistant, is the quarterback's coach in Detroit. Like, give me Aaron Glenn with Burnell as OC. Give me Dennis Allen as DC. Give me Kelvin Shepard as DC. Like, I'm all in for that. Sign me up. Those are the first-time guys that I trust. I trust to give these guys the keys to the franchise. Jets worldwide, the amount of coaching candidates being interviewed for both head coach and general managers has surpassed a ridiculous amount. I spoke about it earlier. Snowball, yes. Snowball, I spoke about it earlier. It's like you're talking to Mike Loxley. You're giving Jeff Ulbrich a chance to interview for the job. Speak to Mike McCarthy, who's won a Super Bowl as a head coach, who led the Cowboys to 12-5 seasons, 18 years of head coaching experience. Like, speak to these guys if you want to cast a wide net. Let's see. Brian Glick, it feels like this round of interviews are 2 to 3 hours and virtual. They are screening meetings. A real head coach or GM interview is 48 hours. Yeah, this is the first. I feel like you mentioned this round of interviews. I think this is the first round of interviews. So yeah, they're just about. I don't think they're wrapped up with the coaches yet, but they're done with the GM. So they're going to start calling guys back for second rounds. I think interesting names to watch in the second round. Mike Borgonzi, John Eric Sullivan from the Packers could be interesting. So you have those two guys. I think, maybe you bring Thomas Dimitrov back because you haven't spoken to him in over a month. So there's those three guys I think you could kind of bring back for that second round. Brian Gain, who has a history with the organization, he's with the Bills right now. Bring those guys back. I expect them to bring 6 or 7 candidates back for the GM job, I'd say, for second round. I think they were impressed with Grigson from what we've seen/heard. So maybe Grigson comes back. I'm looking forward to see what they do in the second round. I want a GM in place though, like I said before the Senior Bowl. That's what I want to see. Where are we? Zoink Nation tuning in. I appreciate your support. Can you recall what made you a passionate Jet fan? What was your moment in history that made you obsessed? This is what I have to say here. Zoink Nation kind of, picked it up from my dad, my family. They're obviously all Jet fans, but I had a moment. They were playing the Raiders in 2019 at home, struggling all season long. They're about to win the game. I was so excited. I've said this story a couple times, so I'll just make it quick. But, I was so excited. I was running around. The Jets are going to win. Jets are going to win. Greg Williams, who was later fired the next day, their former defensive coordinator, decides to call an all-out blitz. And Henry Ruggs, who I think, he doesn't get into that tragic accident. I think he had the potential to be a top wide receiver in this league. Boom, you call an all-out blitz. He shakes loose Lamar Jackson, the cornerback. For those who remember, Lamar Jackson, the cornerback, not quarterback. He was on the Jets for a few seasons. Completely burns Jackson. Boom, right to the, cover zero blitz. Boom, right to the right to the house, and they end up winning the game. It was just, it was crazy. And the Jets somehow lose in that fashion. And then after that, my dad goes to me and he says, you have a choice. You can root for the Jets. You could choose another team, but you choose another team, you're sticking with them forever. And I thought about it. I slept on it, and I said, Dad, I'm riding with Jets. Ever since then, I've really been a diehard fan. I'd say my fandom really came to the next level the beginning of the 2022 season. So the moment that made me obsessed, it's hard to say. I think the 2022 draft class was really, really exciting. Like that, once you bring in that amount, between Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner, Jermaine Johnson, I was like, yeah, this team is going to be fun. And that's where I was like, I'm all in. I'm becoming a full diehard fan. And then towards the end of last year, with just 2 weeks left in the season, is when I started this show. And it's done great things ever since. So I appreciate your support. You guys are the ones who keep the show going. Wild Wave, if we get like a Josh McCown or Tanner Angstrom as OC, we need to bring in a veteran presence like Doug Peterson to take the stress and weight off them. Are you talking about potentially Doug Peterson as a head coach? Or are you talking about him as a pass game coordinator? I would love McCown as head coach and Peterson OC. I think that is a really, really solid scenario. And then you bring in a solid DC. Sign me up for that any day of the week. Brian Glick, I'm not a fan of Grigson. I know a lot of people aren't. His drafts, he drafted Andrew Luck. He wasn't able to sustain an offensive line. I mean, he drafted T.Y. Hilton too. Was a great player. He was top pick, but still he hit on T.Y. Hilton. I think what I have to say to talk fans off the ledge is never had a losing season. So a GM's record could be misleading, and I think he could be. I think this is a scenario where it is misleading, but he's never had a losing season as a GM. He's brought a team to the AFC Championship game. From a record standpoint, there's a lot to like in Grigson. Just from what his draft classes, I think where he loses a lot of people. Let's see. Domenico, I appreciate you tuning in. Jets are clueless going to hire another first-time coach. Enough already. Hire Gruden or Cal. We need an experienced coach. They've gone the other route 7 times out of 8 since Parcells. Enough. I agree. I want someone with experience, but with Mike Vrabel off the board, Brian Flores, I think pending an incredible interview. I think Aaron Glenn, just makes too much sense. Don't get me wrong. I would love to interview Pete Carroll. I would love to interview John Gruden, but it seems as if the Jets aren't going to go with those guys. So I think we just need to realize the reality that they're not getting John Gruden, they're not getting Pete Carroll, and it's going to be Aaron Glenn or Brian Flores. I think that's where we need to. That's where we need to just sit and realize, okay, we're not getting John Gruden, we're not getting Pete Carroll. It's a pipe dream at this point. Haven't even brought them in for interviews. Let's see. Jets Worldwide. Only the Jets would ask their ex-general manager to pick the next general manager. This is bonkers. It's crazy to think that Mike Tannenbaum, who was fired by Woody Johnson, is assisting with the GM search. But I think Woody trusts Tannenbaum. Although it came to an end and Woody ultimately fired Tannenbaum, they haven't made the playoffs since Mike Tannenbaum was the GM of this team. So I do think Woody has to instill at least some sort of faith in Mike Tannenbaum, or he would not have brought him aboard. I think Woody Johnson trusts Mike Tannenbaum, although he fired him, as crazy as that sounds. Wildwave, like an assistant head coach, yeah. I mean, you give me McCown as head coach. You give me McCown as head coach. Doug Peterson, offensive coordinator, assistant head coach. If that, we make a title like that for a guy like him, again, like I said, sign me up. I'm all in on McCown with the right staff there. That's the catch. With the right staff. Appreciate you tuning in. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Keep your questions, comments, super chats, memberships flowing. If you missed it earlier, our prizes for the the raffle memberships, the membership raffle. 2 prizes, they're announced. 2 signed prizes. Wayne Corbett signed football is one of the prizes. A Garrett Wilson signed mini helmet is our other signed prize for this month. And then you get a free item. The other prizes include a free item from your merch store, and then a free channel emoji. So that's what you get by gifting a membership. Every membership you gift gets you a ticket into our raffle. So keep them coming. Appreciate your support. And the winners are drawn at the end of every month. This is our first month doing it. It's been a great hit. So hopefully we're able to keep it going. You guys are the ones who keep the show alive. So your support means a ton to me. I appreciate all your support on the show. Let's get into this week's mailbag questions. I know we have a ton of mailbag questions from this week. Let's see how many we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It was 6 mailbag questions this week. So we'll get into the mailbag. Let's see. Our first guy up who submitted this question via Twitter, Jets X Factors, Stefan Stelling comes in and says, think there's any shot the Jets pursue Todd Monken? They interviewed him before, but haven't this time so far. I think the problem, Stefan, with a guy like Todd Monken, why he wouldn't want to come here, there's not necessarily an offensive plan. No offensive stability. We don't know who the quarterback of this team is. And why would he want to leave his great situation right now with Lamar Jackson and come here and potentially try to work with a Tyrod Taylor and Aaron Rodgers? Like, I think he's in a great spot where he is in Baltimore. I don't see him wanting to leave that job. And also, I think there might be some, bitterness from him that he didn't land the head coaching job when they interviewed him in 2019 and then hiring Gase. Like, I think that just might be enough for him. I don't think they're going to pursue Monken. I don't even think he lands an interview at this point. So I would love him. I think he's done great work as a coordinator in this league. He did great work as a head coach at the college level. I just don't think the Jets are going to go that route. Great question, Stefan. Our next question is from our guy Zazzy Jets, who submits his question via Twitter. What has led to Aaron Rodgers' meteoric fall in intermediate accuracy? Great question, Zazzy. Rodgers was at the bottom of the league and basically all from an accuracy standpoint, whether it was ADOT, adjusted completion percentage. It was a bad year for Rodgers. I guess what I have to say is he was obviously left mobile from the Achilles injury. He was playing hurt. We know that, at least for a few games this season. So I guess it's hard to really pinpoint a single factor that led to it, but one of the great parts of Aaron Rodgers' games, he was able to get out of the pocket, extend plays, and then connect with his receivers. He wasn't really able to show shades of his vintage self in that particular facet as much as I think most fans expected. So I think that could be something. I thought the offensive line was okay. I thought they did a good job protecting him, but I just don't think his mobility allowed him to extend plays and be able to make all of his reads as much as it did, 3 to 4 years ago. So I think that's one of the factors, but I think there's so many. Like his wide receivers gave him I think they had the most or second most drop passes this season, but still his adjusted completion percentage, removing those drops, is still not great. So I just don't think he has the ability to make enough reads and extend plays as he did a few years ago prior to the Achilles injury. I think the Achilles injury played a huge factor in his so much struggles this season. Next question from our guy Ed, who submits his question from Twitter: is interviewing GM and head coach candidates simultaneously a good strategy for the Jets, or are they caught up in the NFL personnel replacement merry-go-around? I haven't really thought much of it. I know it was a little puzzling for fans. Like, why are you interviewing Ron Rivera and Rex Ryan before you speak with general manager candidates? I don't mind it. Like, you're getting these guys in, and I think it's to the point where you kind of get your thoughts. Okay, we really liked Ryan Grigson. I'm making it up as general manager, but we didn't particularly like Brian Flores in his head coaching interview. But we were really blown away with Bobby Slowick in his interview. Let's go back to a guy like Grigson and say, hey, would you want to work with Slowick? We were really, really impressive. We were really, really impressed with his interview. So I could see the Jets potentially trying to connect dots between a few candidates there. So that's what I make out of it, and that's what I think. I don't mind it. I don't hate it as much as I think fans have kind of been promoting it. But before we keep it going, a $20 super chat from our guy Jeffrey. And he gets a Jets. There we go. Jeffrey, you are an absolute legend. Your support here means a ton. Connor, you are a prodigy. I've enjoyed your take since training camp through another dissatisfying season. Keep faith, my friends. Jeffrey, your support means a ton. You've been with me for a long time. You said you can't give from my iPad. That's all good, Jeffrey. The $20 super chat means a ton. All the support that you've brought to the show, you're almost in here every show, supporting me in the comments section. I see it all the time, Jeffrey. That means a lot. I appreciate your support, sticking with me, and dropping a $20 super chat. That means a lot, Jeffrey. An absolute legend tuning in for sure, Jeffrey. Like I said, appreciate it. Keep it going with the mailbag. Gio submits his question via Twitter. Will Aaron Glenn's playing days with the Jets have an impact on whether he wins the head coaching nod? I think it kind of adds to that cool storyline. We know the Jets are an organization who like these cool storylines. It's cool that he was a first round pick, spent 8 seasons with the team, and now he is a front runner for the head coaching job. Like, I think that is a really, really cool storyline. So I can see the Jets liking him. Obviously, he has that connection with Bill Parcells. He's a Bill Parcells' disciple, so to speak. Like, him and Parcells have a great relationship, which I think is something that fans should kind of hone in on, how much they love Parcells and obviously Glenn's history with the organization. So I think there's a lot to like in Glenn. I certainly think it helps his chances that he played for the Jets. That's what I say. That's what I'll say. I think it helps his chances that he has a history, not only from his playing days, Gio, this is important to note, but as a personnel scout for 2 seasons after his retirement. So I think it's crucial that he has a connection with the Jets. That's what I'll say. Spencer comes in with, I think, what's one of the best mailbag questions we ever got. He submits his question via our Discord. What are the 5 main attributes a head coach will need to be successful at the Jets and in the New York market? What's the order of their importance and which head coach candidate displays them best? An incredible question. Like I said, I'll start with this. I'll put 5. I would prefer them to have head coaching experience, but if you have a few years of experience as a top-notch coordinator on your respective side of the ball, I'll do that there. So that's probably 5 for me. 4, I think you need someone who wants to be a New York Jet. I think you really need someone who wants to be here, wants to be in Florham Park, and is eager to turn this team around, bring them back to the playoffs for the first time in now 14 seasons. I think that's probably number 4. That's at the top of my list for what you really want. Someone who really wants the job, I guess, the overall message. Number 3, I think forming a strong staff around you. Like we've seen, I see you guys talking about Keith Carter in the chat. We're going to get into him. There are so many, I think it's easy to hone in. Oh, the head coach is so important. The coordinator is so important. I agree. Coordinators are very important, but like even Keith Carter, who I'm going to get into what you guys are talking about with him there. Like, you bring in a legit run game coordinator. I think this run game, I think Breece Hall is a way better season, and this run game and offensive line is a lot better than what we saw. And, the skill sets are overall utilized better. So if you put a strong staff around this guy, I think putting a strong staff around whoever the next head coach is, no matter if they have experience or not, is going to be very important to this team's future success. So I'll put that at 3 there. 2, I'd say someone who's going to come in and discipline. Someone who's not going to accept 16 penalties per game. No. That is not happening under the next head coach. We simply can't allow that to happen. This Jets team in 2025 better not have, 80 to 100 penalty yards allowed per game. You can't have that happen if you want to be a winning team in this league. So, no. They have to come in and they need to discipline these players. That's number 2. And number 1 for me is having a fiery personality and being able to handle the New York market. We've seen, since Rex Ryan, this Jets organization hasn't had a coach who's able to come in, command a room, and handle the media. I'm not a fan of Rex. I think Rex Ryan did great things for this organization. Don't get me wrong. I've been anti-Rex when it comes to bringing him in for the 2025 coaching job for a surplus of reasons. I could spend 10 hours talking about that, but I think you need someone who's going to come in and is not going to be eaten alive by this media market. I think that is what you need. That is, I think, the most important trait you need to look for in a head coach and general manager. So a great question there by Spencer. That's this week's mailbag. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all your support. You want to get in on the mailbag? I put out a tweet every week. You can reply there, or you could join our Discord. I'll throw the Discord link in the chat for those who want to join daily Jets conversations and much more. So here, if you want to join the Discord, you want to get in on some great conversations, just throw it in the chat. Great stuff there. So you could contribute to our mailbag there and on Twitter. So like I said, we're going to try to do the mailbags lately. They've been a big hit since we did them. So we're going to try to keep going. Keith Carter talk. We are so used to having a horrible O-line. We are under the delusion of returning 4 or 5 mediocre linemen. As I said, our O-line is soft. We can't get tough yard when we need one. That's where the run game coordinator and Keith Carter comes in. You bring in a legit O-line coach and you bring in a legit run game coordinator. I think this makes a huge difference in the team's success next year. As for I seriously think Joe Tippmann is able to be the team's next center. I think Morgan Moses, you bring him back. He's the uncertain piece, so I'm gonna avoid him for a second right now. But you look at Joe Tippmann. I think you have AVT, who's a solid guard in this league when he's able to stay healthy. John Simpson should have been in the Pro Bowl this year, had a great season, among the league's best at the guard position. And Olu Fashanu. I seriously think those 4 pieces are locked in as starters next year. That's just where I am. The right tackle position certainly uncertain. Definitely uncertain. No pun intended there. I would love to bring in an extra right guard. Whether I want to re-sign Morgan Moses, but then I want to draft someone or sign another right tackle in free agency. That's where I am for the tackle position there. Oscar comes in. He's been a member for 1 month. He comes in with his member super chat. Proud to be the lone owner of the Spagnolo Island. Oscar, I'm not a big Spags guy. I know you're a huge Spags guy. It's the fact that you want to be the proud owner of the Spags Island. It's all yours, brother. 11-41 concerns me as a head coach. That's what I'm going to say. A 1-15 season concerns me. A 2-14 season concerns me. That's all I have to say. I feel like we're not really learning from our mistakes there. If you want to go ahead and hire Steve Spagnuolo, a defensive mind who went 11-41. I understand the scenario was not ideal in St. Louis with the Rams, but still, you can't sell me on it. If you want to go with someone from the Chiefs dynasty, I'd take Matt Nagy over Steve Spagnuolo any day of the week. I know Nagy gets a lot of hate, but he has head coaching experience. He's a coach of the year. He's brought a team to the playoffs. Should have won a playoff game if it wasn't for the double doink. I'd much prefer Matt Nagy over Steve Spagnuolo. I appreciate you all tuning in. Smash the like button. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Your support means a ton on the program. Last chance to get in our membership raffle for today's show. You guys supported a ton today, which means a lot. So last chance to get on the memberships. Last chance to get your final questions in. Last chance to call into the show with the pinned comment in the chat. We threw the Discord link in earlier. It should be in the description below, but in case it's not, we're going to drop the merch store, which I dropped earlier at the top of the show. It would mean a lot to me if you guys could go ahead and check this out. We have a ton of great merch over on the store. So I'll drop this link in the chat. And you guys could go over and... Where is it? Boom. There we go. Go in and check out the merch store. Some great stuff's there. I appreciate your support. Let's see. We'll wrap up here. Captain Superman, defensive coordinator Rick Ryan, head coach Glenn O, offensive coordinator McCown. Love McCown as OC. Love Glenn as head coach. You could sell me on Rex as DC. I just don't think his ego allows him to be a defensive coordinator. I think if he returns to the league, it would be as a head coach. I don't think he is able to put himself in a role as a defensive coordinator. So I think if he comes in, it's as a head coach, which Connor Hughes already said is completely out of the question. He's not coming in he's not going to be a part of this team next season, which I think is a good thing. I don't want him on the staff. I really don't. I think as much as he brought them on the unforgettable back-to-back AFC Championship games, he hasn't been a coach in this league since 2010. I mean, he was last time he coached the Jets, obviously brought them to the AFC Championship was 2010. Hasn't coached since 2016. That's 9 years. He said no offensive stability throughout his whole career as a coach. What tells me he's able to come in and run a modern day offense? Nothing. DC, like I said, you could sell me on it. I just don't see him wanting to settle for a coordinator job in this league and at this point of his coaching career. I appreciate you all tuning in. Smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel. We're going to wrap up here. I just saw a few of you guys join the Discord. Brian Glick and BC are now in the Discord. I appreciate you joining. Great stuff there. You get notified before every time we go live. Some great exclusive content. You can contribute to our mailbag. Some daily Jets discussion. So if you haven't already, be sure to join the Discord. Last chance to get your final questions, comments, thoughts in. Last chance to call one of the show. Like I said, I want a GM in place by next week. I do. Get him in here before the Senior Bowl. Like the scouting process, I know we're only January 16th, but the scouting process is going to start to ramp up. Free agency is going to start to come. Like, I want a plan in place soon. I want, as much as I love talking about this head coach and GM search, I prefer that than where we were last year talking about the draft on January 16th. But I think it's time we get someone in here. We spent so much time breaking down literally every single potential candidate for this job. Now let's, Woody Johnson, Mike Tannenbaum, Rick Spielman. Let's make a decision. Let's get someone in the building. So it's time. Get a head coach and GM in here. That'll do it for me. I appreciate you all tuning in here on this Thursday afternoon, January 16th, 2025. I am your host, Connor Long, signing off. JTS Jets, Jets, Jets.